They say you can't inherit regret. But standing in the rain outside a rusted metal warehouse in the middle of nowhere, Oregon, holding a key to a life I'd spent 30 years running from, I'm here to tell you that's a lie. My name is Sarah Blake. 3 weeks ago, I was a senior aerospace engineer at Boeing. 20 years of calculations, CAD models, and conference rooms where I was always the only woman who'd started on a factory floor. I clawed my way up from my father's world of greasy hands and welding torches into the clean, bright realm of advanced degrees and corner offices. Then they fired me. 52 seconds. That's how long it took to erase 2 decades. Restructuring, they called it. I call it being 45 and female in a young man's industry. 2 days after that, my father died. Heart attack, they said. Alone in this workshop he'd never told me about in a town I'd never heard of, protecting a secret that was about to become my problem. The lawyer's letter was simple. Inherit the property and $47,000 in back taxes, or walk away and let it go to auction. I had 60 days to decide. 60 days to choose between the last piece of my father and my daughter's college fund. I came here to sell it, to sign the papers, and walk away from Frank Blake's legacy one final time. But when I opened that door, I didn't find a workshop. I found a war my father had been fighting in silence, and now that war was mine. They say you can't inherit regret, but standing in the rain outside a rusted metal warehouse in the middle of nowhere, Oregon, holding a key to a life I'd spent 30 years running from, I'm here to tell you that's a lie. My name is Sarah Blake. 3 weeks ago, I was a senior aerospace engineer at Boeing. 20 years of calculations, CAD models, and conference rooms where I was always the only woman who'd started on a factory floor. I clawed my way up from my father's world of greasy hands and welding torches into the clean, bright realm of advanced degrees and corner offices. Then they fired me. 52 seconds. That's how long it took to erase 2 decades. Restructuring, they called it. I call it being 45 and female in a young man's industry. 2 days after that, my father died. Heart attack, they said. Alone in this workshop he'd never told me about in a town I'd never heard of, protecting a secret that was about to become my problem. The lawyer's letter was simple. Inherit the property and $47,000 in back taxes, or walk away and let it go to auction. I had 60 days to decide. 60 days to choose between the last piece of my father and my daughter's college fund. I came here to sell it, to sign the papers and walk away from Frank Blake's legacy one final time. But when I opened that door, I didn't find a workshop. I found a war my father had been fighting in silence, and now that war was mine. The firing happened on a Tuesday. Isn't that how all catastrophes begin? On ordinary days under fluorescent lights, with polite corporate language that translates to your life is over. I sat in Michael Chen's office, and yes, I see the irony that a man 20 years younger than me got to decide my fate while he read from a script HR had prepared. His hands shook slightly. At least he had the decency to be uncomfortable. Sarah, as part of our Q3 optimization initiatives, we're streamlining senior engineering positions. He couldn't meet my eyes. Your role has been identified as redundant. Redundant. 20 years of innovation, 12 patents with my name on them, and I was redundant. The Orion Stabilization System, I said quietly. That was my design. It's in 17 aircraft currently in production. We appreciate your contributions. The script again, corporate speak for you're already gone. Your severance package reflects your years of service. 6 months' salary, continued health benefits through year-end and career transition support. 6 months' salary, $37,000 after taxes. I had a mortgage I couldn't afford after the divorce. A daughter starting college in 6 months with tuition bills that would break me, and a career that apparently had an expiration date I'd never been warned about. I cleaned out my desk in 17 minutes. 20 years fits into 2 cardboard boxes when you strip away the sentiment. Photos of Emma at various ages. My father's old metal compass, the one tool I'd kept from his workshop when I left for college. A coffee mug that said, "Nevertheless, she persisted." The irony wasn't lost on me. Rebecca from accounting cried when she hugged me goodbye. Tom Hendricks, the engineer I'd mentored for 5 years, couldn't even look at me. He'd be in my office by Monday, I knew. Younger, cheaper, and male. The trifecta. I drove home in silence. No radio, no tears. Just the hum of tires on wet pavement and the hollow space where my identity used to be. Emma was home when I arrived. Spring break from her freshman year at Portland State. She took one look at my face and knew. "Mom, I got laid off." She wrapped her arms around me, and that's when I finally broke. Not for the job, for the failure, for being 45 and starting over, for the look on my daughter's face when she realized her mother wasn't invincible after all. "We'll figure it out," she whispered into my hair. 18 years old and comforting her mother. I'd raised her to be strong, independent, fearless. I never meant for her to have to be the adult. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with a calculator and my bank statements doing math that didn't work, no matter how many times I ran the numbers. Savings $31,000. Severance $37,000. Total $68,000. Emma's tuition room and board for next year $45,000. Mortgage, insurance, utilities for 6 months $28,000. Total needed $73,000. I was $5,000 short of surviving until I found another job. And the job market for 45-year-old female engineers in a recession wasn't exactly robust. The envelope arrived 2 days later. Thick cream-colored paper. The kind lawyers use when the news is expensive. Hutchins and Mark's attorneys at law, Portland, Oregon. Dear Ms. Blake, it is with deep regret that we inform you of the passing of your father, Franklin James Blake, on March 14th. As executor of his estate, I must notify you of several time-sensitive matters requiring your immediate attention. Your father's death occurred at his primary place of business, a metal fabrication workshop located at 1847 Ridge Road, Northwood, Oregon. The county medical examiner has ruled the death as cardiac arrest. His remains have been cremated per his written wishes. You are the sole heir to Mr. Blake's estate, which consists primarily of the aforementioned property and its contents. However, I must inform you that the property carries a substantial tax lien in the amount of $47,312 due to unpaid property taxes dating back 6 years. Under Oregon law, you have 60 days from the date of death to either satisfy the lien or relinquish the property to county auction. Given the remote location and condition of the property, I would advise a prompt decision. Please contact our office at your earliest convenience to discuss your options. Sincerely, Gerald Hutchins, Esquire. I read it 3 times, then I called the number. Then I. Gerald Hutchins had a voice like gravel and sympathy. He'd known my father for 15 years, he said. Good man, kept to himself, paid in cash, never caused trouble until he stopped paying his taxes 6 years ago. Why, I asked. Why would he let it get this bad? I don't know, Ms. Blake. Frank was private about his finances. All I know is the county's been trying to collect for years. They're not patient anymore. What's the property worth? A pause, papers shuffling. Honestly, the tax assessor values it at $83,000, but that's raw land value. The building itself it's an old industrial structure, no utilities beyond a generator, middle of nowhere. In this market, you'd be lucky to get $50,000 for it. $50,000, less than the lien. So I'd inherit debt. Unless there's something of value inside, equipment inventory. Your father ran some kind of metal shop. There might be tools worth salvaging. I closed my eyes. My father's shop. The place he'd vanish to every weekend when I was growing up. The place he loved more than he'd ever loved me. I need to see it, I heard myself say. I'd be happy to meet you there. I have keys and the property deed. How's Friday? Friday, 2 days away. 2 days to decide whether to claim the last piece of Frank Blake or let it disappear into a county auction like he'd never existed at all. Friday works. I told Emma that night over reheated Chinese takeout. Grandpa Frank had a workshop. I thought he just worked at that hardware store. That was his day job. The workshop was... I searched for words. His escape. From what? From us. From responsibility. From a daughter who thought his dreams were too small and his hands too dirty. From normal life, I guess. Emma put down her fork. She had her grandfather's eyes, green with flecks of gold, the only thing she'd inherited from his side of the family. Are you going to keep it? I don't know. I need to see it first. $47,000 in back taxes, Em. That's almost everything we have. But if you sell it, I'll get maybe $3,000 after the lien is paid, if I'm lucky. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, I want to come with you. You don't have to. He was my grandfather. I never really knew him. You made sure of that. The accusation landed like a slap, true but still sharp. That's not fair. Isn't it? Emma's voice was soft, not angry, sad. You barely spoke to him after I was born. Every birthday card he sent, you'd thank him and throw it away. When he called, you'd make an excuse. I met him maybe 6 times in my whole life. It was complicated. It always is with you. She left the table. I sat there with the cartons of cold lo mein and the weight of 18 years of choices I couldn't undo. She was right, of course. I'd cut my father out of our lives with surgical precision, not because he was cruel, not because he was absent, because every time I looked at him, I saw what I was afraid of becoming: trapped, small, dreaming dreams that fit inside a workshop instead of reaching for the sky. I'd wanted more. I'd gotten it. And now here I was, unemployed and broke, driving to the middle of nowhere to sort through the ruins of a man I'd spent a lifetime running from. The irony was so heavy I could taste it. Friday morning dawned gray and cold. March in Oregon means rain, the kind that doesn't pour but never stops. Just a constant depressing drizzle that seeps into your bones. Emma and I loaded into my Honda Civic at 7. The drive to Northwood was 3 hours southeast into the Cascade foothills, where civilization thinned out and gave way to logging country. Towns with one stoplight, gas stations that still had payphones, America's forgotten places. We didn't talk much. Emma dozed against the window. I watched the landscape change from suburban sprawl to farmland to dense forest. The trees grew taller and darker, Douglas fir and hemlock that blocked out the sky. Northwood wasn't even a town. It was a wide spot in the road, with a general store, a post office that doubled as a bait shop, and maybe 24 houses scattered across the hillsides. The kind of place people left, not moved to. Gerald Hutchins was waiting outside the general store in a silver Subaru, 70 if he was a day, with white hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He shook my hand with the practiced sympathy of a man who'd delivered bad news for a living. "Miss Blake, thank you for coming all this way. This is my daughter Emma." He shook her hand too. "You have your grandfather's eyes. He'd have been proud to know you." Emma smiled, but it didn't reach those eyes. "I wish I'd known him. He was a good man. Quiet, but good. Shall we?" We followed his Subaru up a winding gravel road that climbed into the hills. The forest pressed in on both sides so thick that even at midday it felt like dusk. 2 miles up the road dead-ended at a chain-link gate, hanging open on rusted hinges. Beyond it, sitting on a cleared patch of hillside like a beached ship, was my father's workshop. It was bigger than I'd imagined. A massive structure of corrugated steel, maybe 60 feet long and 40 wide, with a roof that peaked at 25 feet. The metal was streaked with rust, the color of old blood against gray primer. No windows, just one massive sliding bay door and a regular door cut into it. Around the building, the forest had started to reclaim the clearing. Blackberry vines climbed the walls. Alder saplings pushed up through cracks in the concrete pad. It looked abandoned, forgotten, exactly like something my father would have loved. "He built this himself," Hutchins said, climbing out of his car. "Bought the land in 1998. Spent 2 years constructing it on weekends. Used to see him driving through town with steel beams in his pickup. Never asked for help. Just did it himself." 1998. The year I graduated college. The year I told him I was never coming back to Seattle. never working with my hands again, never settling for his small dreams. The year I broke his heart and didn't care. Emma touched my arm. "Mom, you okay?" "Yeah." My voice sounded strange. "Let's see what's inside." Hutchins produced a key ring with 3 keys, old-fashioned iron skeleton keys, the kind you don't see anymore. He sorted through them, found the right one, and handed it to me. "You should open it. It's yours now." The key was heavy in my palm, cold. I walked to the small door while Emma and Hutchins waited behind me. The lock was old but well maintained. The key slid in smoothly, turned with a solid click. I pulled the handle. The door swung open into darkness. Air rolled out, carrying the scent of old metal machine oil and something else. Something underneath. The smell of my childhood, of my father's garage, of Saturday mornings when I was small before I learned to be ashamed. I found my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness and revealed my inheritance. Machines, everywhere. Massive industrial equipment shrouded in canvas tarps like sleeping giants. A concrete floor stained with decades of work. Steel rafters overhead disappearing into shadow. Workbenches along one wall covered in tools arranged with military precision. This wasn't a hobbyist's workshop. This was a factory. "Jesus," Emma whispered behind me. I stepped inside. My footsteps echoed in the vast space. I walked to the nearest tarp and pulled it back. Underneath was a metal lathe, 6 feet long, the size of a small car. The surface gleamed dully in my flashlight beam, coated in protective grease. The manufacturer's plate read Harding HLV-H. I knew that name. These machines cost $40,000 new. I moved to the next tarp, a milling machine, then a drill press, a bandsaw with a blade long as my arm, a welding station with tanks still attached, a grinding wheel, a hydraulic press, $200,000 worth of equipment, maybe more. I turned to Hutchins standing in the doorway. "You said it was a metal shop." "It is. This is a full fabrication facility. This is industrial-grade equipment." He looked uncomfortable. "Your father never discussed his business with me. He paid for the land in cash, filed his taxes under a sole proprietorship. As far as I knew, he did custom work, small jobs. Small jobs don't require $250,000 facilities." Emma had found a light switch. She flipped it. Nothing. "Generator's probably out of fuel," Hutchins said. "Your father ran this place off-grid, didn't want to deal with the utility companies, or didn't want anyone tracking his power usage." I walked deeper into the workshop, my mind racing. My father had worked at Cascade Hardware in Seattle for 35 years. Assistant manager, $38,000 a year. We'd lived in a 900-square-foot rental, drove used cars, shopped at Goodwill, and all that time he'd had this. At the back of the workshop, behind a shelving unit stacked with metal stock, I found another door, wooden modern, with a deadbolt. I tried the iron keys. None fit. "Do you have another key?" Hutchins shook his head. "That must be new. Added after the property transferred to trust." "What trust?" He blinked. You don't know your father set up a revocable living trust in 2016. The property was held in trust until his death, at which point ownership transferred to you. It's why the tax lien couldn't force a sale while he was alive. The county's been furious about it. 2016, 6 years ago, right when he stopped paying taxes. I looked at the locked door, then at the workshop full of pristine equipment, then at my daughter's face, confused and fascinated. Something was very wrong here. I need to get in there. I'd advise against breaking down doors before you know what you're dealing with, Hutchins said carefully. Let me make some calls, see if there's another key in the safety deposit box. But I was already walking back to the workbench. I found a crowbar heavy and cold, brought it back to the door. Mom, maybe we should wait. I need to know what he was hiding. I wedged the crowbar into the doorframe and pulled. The wood splintered. I pulled again. The frame cracked. One more heave and the door swung open with a shriek of tearing wood. Inside was an office, 10 by 10, a single desk, a filing cabinet, a chair, and on the desk a metal lockbox. The room was clean, dust-free, like someone had been here yesterday. I stepped inside. Emma followed. Hutchins stayed in the doorway looking nervous. The lockbox was industrial grade, fireproof, the kind you store important documents in. On the front was a keyhole, old-fashioned. I pulled out the key ring Hutchins had given me, tried the second key. It fit. The lock opened with a smooth click that echoed in the small room. I lifted the lid. Inside, rubber-banded together, were stacks of $100 bills. I counted them with shaking hands. 80 bills per stack. 10 stacks. $80,000. Beneath the money was a USB drive, black unmarked, and beneath that a small revolver. Smith & Wesson .38 special, loaded, and beneath that an envelope with my name written in my father's blocky handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. The letter inside was 3 pages handwritten in blue ink. My father's writing, the same handwriting that had signed my birthday cards for 18 years before I stopped opening them. I began to read. Sarah, if you're reading this, I'm dead. And if I'm dead, it means they found me. I know you hate me. You've made that clear for 30 years. I don't blame you. I wasn't the father you needed. I wasn't ambitious. I wasn't educated. I wasn't enough. But I need you to understand something before you decide what to do with this place. Everything you think you know about me is a lie. My name isn't Franklin James Blake. It's Franklin James Morrison. I changed it in 1987, the year before you were born. I wasn't always a hardware store manager. I was an aerospace engineer. I had a master's degree from MIT. I worked for Coal Industries in Seattle developing stabilization systems for next-generation aircraft. I was good at it. Better than good. I had a partner, Marcus Webb. Together we designed something revolutionary. We called it the Adaptive Kinetic Stabilizer. It was a gyroscopic system that could compensate for turbulence in real time, making aircraft safer and more fuel efficient than anything on the market. We were going to change aviation. We were going to be rich. We were going to be famous. Then Vincent Cole's father, Richard Cole, stole our design. He didn't just steal it. He destroyed us. He claimed we'd developed it on company time using company resources. He had lawyers' money and connections. We had patents we'd filed independently, but he buried us in litigation we couldn't afford to fight. Marcus wanted to go public, blow the whistle. I said no. I had a pregnant wife. I had you on the way. I couldn't risk it. So I made a deal. I signed away the patents. I signed a non-disclosure agreement. And I disappeared. Richard Cole gave me $50,000 and a new identity. I took it. I moved to a small town. I got a job at a hardware store. I raised you. I pretended to be someone I wasn't, but I never stopped working. I built this shop in secret. I took on custom jobs under the table, small batches specialty work for clients who valued discretion. I saved every penny, and I kept refining the stabilizer design, because Richard Cole never actually understood what we'd created. He had the plans but not the knowledge. His company produced inferior versions. They never got it right. I did. The complete design is here, Sarah. All 3 parts. The blueprints are hidden in the lathe's base assembly. The material specifications are in the filing cabinet under Invoices 2015, and the final assembly designed the part that makes it actually work. That's the part I never wrote down, because I knew if I died before finishing it, there was only one person on earth smart enough to complete it. You. You have my hands, Sarah. Even if you hate them, even if you ran from them. You learned to weld in this shop when you were 8 years old. You could read a blueprint before you could read a novel. You're an engineer because of me. You're brilliant because I taught you to see the world as a problem that could be solved. And now I'm asking you to solve this one. Vincent Cole Richard's son has been looking for this design for 25 years. He knows I perfected it. He knows it's worth $50 million or more. He's been patient, but he won't wait forever. If he gets it, he'll bury it. The stabilizer would cut fuel costs by 30%. It would make flying safer, but it would also disrupt the industry, make existing fleets obsolete. Vincent's empire is built on maintaining the status quo. He can't let this technology exist, so he'll kill it. Like his father killed my career, like they killed Marcus. Yes, Sarah, they killed him. Marcus didn't commit suicide in 1999. They murdered him and made it look like depression. I have proof. It's on the USB drive in this box. The password is your birthday, day, month, year, no spaces. I know this is a lot. I know you came here to sell this place and forget about me. I know you think I wasted my life. Maybe I did. But this stabilizer, this could save lives. Thousands of them. And you're the only one who can finish it. The choice is yours. You can walk away. Take the money in this box and forget you ever read this letter. I won't blame you. Or you can stay. You can finish what I started. You can be the engineer you were always meant to be, the one who builds things that matter, not just things that make corporations rich. I love you, Sarah. I always have. Even when you hated me. Even when you were too ashamed to let your daughter know me. I hope someday you understand why I did what I did. The key is in the work. It always has been. Dad, I read the letter 3 times. Then I handed it to Emma without a word. She read it silently, her face going pale. Hutchins cleared his throat. Miss Blake, I think you should. The sound of tires on gravel cut him off. We all froze. A car was coming up the road, fast. I moved to the workshop door and looked out. A black Range Rover was pulling through the gate. Expensive, brand new. It stopped next to Hutchins' Subaru. 2 men got out of the front. Big men, security types. Then the rear door opened. A man in his late 40s stepped out. Tailored suit, perfectly groomed. The kind of face you see in Forbes magazine. Handsome in that generic wealthy way. He looked at the workshop, then at me, and he smiled. Ms. Blake, I presume. I didn't answer. He walked forward, hands in his pockets. Casual, confident. My name is Vincent Cole. I believe you've just been reading about my family. My blood went cold. He stopped 10 feet away, close enough to talk, far enough to stay out of reach. I'm sorry for your loss. Your father was a brilliant man, stubborn but brilliant. How did you know I was here? I've had someone watching the property for 6 years, waiting for this day. He glanced past me into the workshop. May I come in? We have a lot to discuss. No. He raised an eyebrow. Ms. Blake, I'm not your enemy. I'm here to make you a very generous offer. I'm not interested. You haven't heard it yet. I don't need to. He sighed, like I was a child refusing to see reason. Your father left you a building full of equipment you don't know how to use, a mountain of debt, and a conspiracy theory about my family. I'm offering you a way out, $750,000 cash for the property and everything in it. $750,000. Emma inhaled sharply behind me. That's nearly 10 times the tax assessor's value, Vincent continued. It's more than fair. It's generous. You could pay off your debts, send your daughter to any college she wants, start fresh. How do you know about my daughter? His smile didn't waver. I make it my business to know about people who inherit things that belong to me. This doesn't belong to you, doesn't it? He pulled a document from his jacket. This is a contract your father signed in 1987. It states that any designs, patents, or intellectual property developed using coal industry's resources belong to the company in perpetuity. He held it out. I didn't take it. Your father stole proprietary technology. He spent 25 years hiding from the consequences. I'm giving you a chance to settle this cleanly. Walk away rich, or I'll see you in court and you'll walk away with nothing. That contract is meaningless. He developed the stabilizer independently. Can you prove that? I couldn't. Not yet. I'll need time to think about it. Of course. He tucked the document away. You have 60 days before the tax lien forces a sale anyway, but I'd advise you not to wait too long. The offer expires in 2 weeks. After that, I'll let the county auction proceed and buy it for pennies on the dollar. He turned to leave, then paused. Your father spent his entire life running from reality, Ms. Blake. He died broke and alone in this shed, clinging to a fantasy that he mattered. Don't make the same mistake. He walked back to his Range Rover. The security men got in. The engine started. As they drove away, Vincent rolled down his window. 2 weeks, Ms. Blake. Think carefully. Then they were gone, gravel crunching under expensive tires, leaving us alone in the rain. I stood there shaking, not from cold, from rage. Emma touched my shoulder. Mom! I turned to look at her, at Hutchins, at the workshop full of machines my father had maintained for decades in secret. Mr. Hutchins, I need you to file paperwork refusing the county auction. I'm accepting the inheritance. Ms. Blake, the tax lien. I'll handle it. With what money you'd need, $47,000. There's $80,000 in the lockbox. Use it. He stared at me. You're sure? I'm sure. Emma's eyes were wide. Mom, that's your only savings. If this doesn't work, it will work. How do you know? I looked at the workshop, at the machines my father had kept perfect for a daughter who'd never appreciated them, at the letter in my hand written by a man who'd sacrificed everything to protect something he believed mattered. Vincent Cole thought my father was a failure, a man who'd wasted his life hiding in a workshop. He was wrong. My father wasn't hiding. He was waiting for me to be ready, to be desperate enough, to be broken enough to finally understand what he'd been trying to teach me all along, that some things are worth fighting for, even when you're alone, even when you're outmatched, even when the world tells you you're dreaming too small. Because my father didn't build this place to escape, I said quietly. He built it to prepare for a war he knew was coming, a war I was going to finish. I walked back into the workshop, found the lathe he'd mentioned, knelt down and examined the base assembly. There, bolted inside a sealed compartment, was a waterproof tube. I unscrewed it with shaking hands. Inside were blueprints, detailed, technical, beautiful, the work of a master engineer. Part 1 of the adaptive kinetic stabilizer. I unrolled them on the workbench. Emma and Hutchins crowded around. What is it? Emma asked. It's a gyroscopic stabilization system. It compensates for turbulence by predicting and counteracting angular momentum changes in real time. In English, it makes airplanes safer and more efficient. If this works the way he designed it, it could revolutionize aviation. Could it really be worth $50 million? I studied the calculations, the precision, the elegance of the design. More, I whispered, much more. Hutchins cleared his throat. Ms. Blake, even if the design is valuable, you'd need to manufacture a working prototype to prove it. Do you know how to operate this equipment? I looked at the lathe, at the welding station, at the milling machine. Did I know how to use them? I'd spent my entire adult life running from workshops like this, from the smell of hot metal and grinding wheels, from my father's world of calloused hands and grease-stained clothes. But before I ran, before I decided I was too good for this life I'd learned, every Saturday for 10 years my father had brought me to his garage. He'd taught me to read micrometers, to set feeds and speeds, to strike an arc and run a bead, to see metal not as solid and final, but as something alive, something that could be shaped with knowledge and patience and respect. I was 8 years old when I made my first weld, 12 when I programmed my first CNC path, 16 when I could strip and rebuild a lathe faster than he could. I'd been good at it, really good. Then I'd discovered that being good at working with your hands made you blue-collar, and blue-collar meant poor, and poor meant trapped. So I'd abandoned it, buried those skills under 4 years of university and 20 years of KD stations and clean offices. But they were still there. Muscle memory doesn't forget. I walked to the welding station, checked the tanks, argon and CO2, both half full. I picked up the TIG torch, felt the weight of it, the balance. My hands remembered. "Yeah," I said. "I know how to use them." Hutchins looked uncertain. "What about the other parts? You said there were 3. I walked to the filing cabinet, found the drawer labeled Invoices 2015. Inside was a binder. Part 2. Material specifications, alloy compositions, heat treatment protocols, machining tolerances down to the 1,000th of an inch. Got it. And the third part, the assembly design, the part that made all the pieces work together, the part my father said he'd never written down, the part I had to create myself. I looked at Emma, at her grandfather's eyes in her young face. I'll figure it out. How? I thought about the letter, about my father spending 25 years perfecting a design in secret, about him dying alone, protecting something he believed mattered, about Vincent Cole thinking we were nothing, that we'd fold, that we'd sell. "Because he taught me how," I said. "He taught me that the answer is always in the work. You just have to be willing to do it." Emma smiled, small, uncertain, but real. "What do you need?" "Time, tools, and someone to teach me what I've forgotten." "Your father's been dead for a week, Miss Blake," Hutchins said gently. "Who's going to teach you?" I looked at the workshop, at the machines arranged with such care, at the workbenches organized like a teaching lab, at the manuals stacked on shelves, each one annotated in my father's handwriting. "He is," I said. "He's going to teach me from the grave." I spent the rest of that day cataloging the workshop. Emma took photos and videos on her phone while Hutchins made calls to handle the legal paperwork. I walked through the space my father had built, seeing it with new eyes. Every machine was immaculate, greased, calibrated, ready to run. The tool boards were organized by size and type, each tool outlined in paint so you could see at a glance what was missing. The metal stock was sorted and labeled. The welding gases were fresh. This wasn't a workshop that had been abandoned. This was a workshop that had been waiting. As the afternoon light faded, I found more of my father's preparations. A 3-ring binder on the desk labeled, "Sarah, start here." Inside were step-by-step instructions for every machine, not manuals, teaching guides, written specifically for me. Page 1. Before you start any machine, check these 3 things. Page 10. When you fail, and you will fail, here's how to diagnose why. Page 20. The difference between good work and great work is patience. Take your time. The metal doesn't care if you're in a hurry. He'd anticipated everything, every question I might have, every mistake I might make. He'd spent years preparing to teach me from beyond death. I sat at his desk and cried, not sad tears, angry tears, grieving tears, for all the years I'd wasted thinking he was simple, for all the conversations we'd never had, for all the Saturdays I'd refused to visit because I was too important, too busy, too successful, for the fact that he'd died believing I hated him. Emma found me there as the last light died. She didn't say anything, just put her arms around me and held on. I was so wrong about him, I whispered. I know. I thought he was a failure, a man with no ambition, no dreams. He had dreams. He just kept them here. I looked up at her. Why didn't you judge him? You barely knew him, but you never looked down on him like I did. She smiled sadly. Because he sent me letters, every month from when I was born until last year. Mom, you threw away your birthday cards, but mine he didn't trust you with. He sent them to my friend Ashley's house, asked her mom to give them to me privately. My heart stopped. What? I have a whole box. He told me about this place, about what he was building, about how someday when I was ready he wanted to teach me his trade, not to trap me, to give me options. She pulled out her phone, showed me photos, letters in my father's handwriting, filled with drawings of machines, explanations of how metal behaves under stress, stories about projects he'd completed. And at the end of every letter, don't tell your mother. She wouldn't understand, but someday you will. He knew you'd end up here, Emma said. He told me 3 years ago, said you'd lose your job eventually, that Boeing would chew you up and spit you out the moment you stopped being profitable. He said when that happened, when you had nothing left, you'd come here. And you'd be with me. And I'd be with me. She wiped her eyes. He said your mother thinks I'm a failure. Maybe I am. But I'm a failure who's preparing a future for the 2 people I love most. Make sure she finds it when she needs it. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. My father had seen everything, known everything, and instead of being angry at my contempt, he'd prepared for the day when I'd be desperate enough to need him. We're going to finish this, I said. We're going to complete his design and we're going to shove it down Vincent Cole's throat. How you haven't operated this equipment in 30 years. You don't know how to run a business. You don't even know if the design actually works. She was right about all of it, but I knew one thing. I know how to learn, and I know how to work. That's all we need. Hutchins appeared in the doorway. Ms. Blake, I've filed the paperwork. The tax lien will be satisfied by Monday. The property is yours free and clear. Thank you. But I have to ask, what's your plan Vincent Cole isn't going to give up? And even if you complete the design, you'd need to manufacture a working prototype. That requires capital you don't have. He was right. The $80,000 in the lockbox would cover the taxes with $33,000 left over, not nearly enough to run a fabrication shop for the months it would take to build a prototype. I'll figure it out. Ms. Blake, I said I'll figure it out. He looked at me for a long moment. then nodded. Your father said the same thing the first time I met him. He'd just bought this land, had no money, no plan, no help. I told him he was crazy. He said crazy was just another word for committed. What did you say? I said I'd handle his legal work for free until he could afford to pay. Took him 8 years, but he eventually paid every penny. He handed me his card. I'm too old to work for free anymore, but I'll bill you quarterly, and I won't push for payment until you're successful. Deal. I shook his hand. Deal. After he left, Emma and I sat in the dark workshop, the only light coming from our phones. We should get a hotel, she said. Come back tomorrow and start fresh. You go. I'm staying here tonight. Mom, there's no heat, no bathroom, no... There's a camping cot in the office. I saw it. And a space heater. I'll be fine. Why? I looked around at the machines, at my father's workspace, at the life he'd built in secret. Because I need to understand him, and the only way to do that is to be here, in his space, doing his work. Emma hesitated, then nodded. Okay, but I'm coming back first thing tomorrow with coffee and breakfast. Deal. She hugged me hard. I'm proud of you, Mom. Grandpa would be too. After she left, I set up the cot in the office, found the space heater and got it running, made a cup of instant coffee from the supplies in the desk drawer. Then I took out the USB drive from the lockbox. My birthday, day, month, year. I typed it in the 14th of March, 1977. The drive unlocked. Inside were 3 folders, one labeled Evidence, one labeled Design Files, one labeled For Sarah. I opened Evidence first. What I found made my blood run cold. Photos of Marcus Webb. Crime scene photos from 1999. Ruled a suicide. Gunshot wound to the head. But my father had collected autopsy reports, ballistics analysis, witness statements. The gun was found in Marcus's right hand, but Marcus was left-handed. The powder burns were inconsistent with self-infliction. 3 witnesses saw 2 men leaving his apartment the night he died. The investigation had been closed in 48 hours. Ruled suicide, case dismissed. But my father had kept digging. He'd found the names of the 2 men, security contractors who'd worked for coal industries. One had died in a car accident in 2003. The other had disappeared. There were bank records showing payments from a coal industries subsidiary to both men, $50,000 each, dated the week after Marcus died. My father had built a case, a real case, enough for a criminal investigation, but he'd never gone to the police. Why I opened the For Sarah folder. Inside was a video file. Timestamped 2 weeks ago. I clicked play. My father's face filled the screen. He looked old, tired, sick. Sarah, if you're watching this, you've found the evidence, and you're wondering why I never used it. He coughed. A wet, painful sound. I tried. 20 years ago. I went to the FBI. Gave them everything. They investigated for 6 months. Then they closed the case. Insufficient evidence, they said. But I knew better. Vincent Cole has friends, high places. Money buys silence. He leaned closer to the camera. So I changed tactics. I realized the only way to beat them wasn't with evidence. It was with success. If I could complete the stabilizer, if I could make it undeniable, then it wouldn't matter what they'd done. The truth would win. Another cough. I'm not going to finish it, Sarah. The cancer's spreading. 6 months, the doctors say, maybe less. And Vincent knows. He's been patient for 25 years, but he won't wait anymore. He'll make a move soon. He smiled, sad and knowing. That's why I'm glad you hate me. Because if you loved me, you'd have stayed close. You'd have been a target. But you left. You made yourself untouchable by making yourself a stranger. A pause. It's the greatest gift you ever gave me. The freedom to prepare this without putting you in danger. He reached off camera and picked something up, a metal sculpture, an eagle wings spread. I made this for you when you graduated college. I was going to give it to you, but you wouldn't see me. So I kept it, put it on my desk here, looked at it every day. He turned it in his hands. You were always meant to fly, Sarah, higher than me, higher than this place. I never resented that. I was proud. His voice cracked. But now I need you to come back to Earth for a little while, just long enough to finish what I started. Then you can fly again, higher than ever. He set the eagle down. I love you. I forgive you. And I'm sorry I wasn't the father you needed. The screen went black. I sat there in the dark workshop, tears streaming down my face, and understood. My father hadn't failed. He'd won. By losing me, he'd kept me safe. By letting me hate him, he'd let me build a life Vincent couldn't touch. By dying alone in this workshop, he'd set a trap 25 years in the making. And I was the trigger. I wiped my eyes, opened the design files folder. Inside were hundreds of documents, CAD models, simulation results, manufacturing protocols. My father's entire life's work organized and ready. But the assembly design part 3 was missing because he knew I'd have to create it myself. Not to test me, to protect me. If Vincent ever found this drive, he'd have parts 1 and 2. But without part 3, it was useless. And part 3 only existed in my head, in my training, in the skills my father had given me before I abandoned him. I couldn't be tortured for information I didn't have yet. I could only create it by doing the work, by becoming the engineer my father had always known I could be. I stood up, walked to the workbench, spread out the blueprints for part 1. Then I opened my father's teaching binder to page 1. Before you start any machine, check these 3 things. I checked them. Then I got to work. The first light of dawn came through the grimy office window like a judgment. I'd been awake for 36 hours straight, my eyes burning, my hands shaking from too much instant coffee and not enough food. But I'd done it. I'd created part 3. At least I thought I had. The design spread across the desk in front of me looked right. Elegant. The kind of solution that feels inevitable once you see it, even though finding it took all night. I'd run the calculations 4 times, modeled the stress points, verified the tolerances. On paper it was perfect, but paper had never killed anyone. Metal had. I heard tires on gravel and looked up. Emma's car. She was early. Or maybe I'd lost track of time. She came through the door carrying 2 large coffees and a bag from McDonald's, took one look at me and stopped. Mom, when was the last time you slept? I'm fine. You look like hell. I finished it. I gestured to the blueprints. Part 3, the assembly design. She set down the food and came to look. Is it going to work? I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? You're the engineer. Engineering isn't magic, Em. You can calculate, simulate, predict. But until you build it and test it, you don't actually know anything. She studied the drawings. So what's next? I build a prototype, small scale first. If that works, then full size. How long will that take? I did the math in my head, learning curve on equipment I hadn't touched in decades, sourcing materials, fabricating parts to tolerances measured in thousandths of an inch, testing, failing, iterating. 6 months, maybe more. You've got 2 weeks before Vincent's offer expires. I'm not taking his offer. Mom, be realistic. You can't. I can. I will. I picked up one of the coffees, drank half of it in 3 swallows. But I need help. I can't do this alone. I'll help. I can learn. Not you. I mean, yes, you, but not just you. I need someone who knows this equipment, someone who knew Dad, someone who can teach me what I've forgotten. Emma pulled out her phone, started scrolling. Grandpa's journal mentioned a guy, Tom something, said he was the best welder in the county. Tom who? Walker. Tom Walker. She showed me a photo from the journal. A man in his 60s standing next to my father in front of this very workshop. Both of them holding welding torches, both grinning. The photo was dated 2018. Dad had a partner. Not a partner, a friend. The journals talk about him a lot. Says Tom taught him advanced TIG techniques, helped him with some of the bigger fabrication jobs. Where do we find him? Emma was already typing. There's a Thomas Walker, age 62, living in Northwood. Address is 3 miles from here. Let's go. Mom, you need to eat. You need to sleep. I need to get this done before Vincent figures out what I'm doing. I grabbed the bag of food and headed for the door. Emma followed, shaking her head but not arguing. She'd learned when I got like this there was no stopping me, just damage control. We drove through Northwood in the early morning light. The town looked different than it had yesterday, less like the end of the world and more like the kind of place people chose. Quiet, simple, away from everything that didn't matter. Tom Walker's house was a small cabin set back from the road surrounded by Douglas firs. An old Ford pickup sat in the driveway, its bed filled with welding equipment. A workshop behind the house sent up a thin trail of smoke from a chimney. Someone was already working. I parked and walked to the workshop. The door was open. Inside, a man was bent over a welding table, running a bead on what looked like a custom gate. The arc was perfect, steady, the kind of control that comes from decades of practice. I waited until he finished the pass and lifted his helmet. He was exactly the man from the photo. Weathered face, white hair, eyes the color of steel. He looked at me with no recognition at all. Help you, Tom Walker. That's me. My name is Sarah Blake. Frank Blake was my father. His expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. I know who you are. Then you know why I'm here. Do I need help finishing what he started. Tom set down his torch, pulled off his gloves, studied me with the kind of look that sees right through polite lies into the truth underneath. Frank said you'd never come, said you hated everything this place stood for. I did. What changed? He died. Vincent Cole showed up, and I read the letters. Tom nodded slowly. The stabilizer. You know about it. Frank told me everything 3 years ago, when the cancer started. Said if anything happened to him I should wait. See if you came. See if you gave a damn. I give a damn. Why? Because of the money. Because Vincent offered you $750,000 to walk away. I blinked. How do you know about that? Small town. Vincent's been bragging to anyone who'll listen that he's about to close the deal of the century. That Frank Blake's daughter is just another greedy fool who'll sell her father's legacy for cash. Anger flared hot in my chest. He's wrong. Is he? I met his eyes. I spent 30 years running from my father, from this life, from everything he valued. I thought I was better than him, smarter, more ambitious. And you know what I learned? What? That ambition without purpose is just greed with better PR. My father had purpose. I had a corner office and a severance package. He built something that mattered. I built a career that discarded me the moment I stopped being profitable. Tom's expression softened slightly. That why you're here? Redemption. I'm here because he asked me to finish something he couldn't. And because Vincent Cole thinks I'm too weak, too stupid, and too selfish to try, I'm going to prove him wrong. A long silence. Then Tom walked to a cabinet and pulled out a binder, tossed it on the workbench. Inside were fabrication orders, dozens of them, all signed by my father, all marked paid in full. Your father paid me $500 a week to spy on you for Vincent Cole. My stomach dropped. I took the money for 6 months, told Vincent you were avoiding the property, probably going to sell, let the tax lien go through. Vincent was happy, thought he'd won before you even knew there was a fight. Why are you telling me this? Because 3 months ago I stopped taking Vincent's money, told him I was done. He asked why. I said because Frank Blake saved my grandson's life, and I don't betray men I owe. What happened? Tom pulled out his phone, showed me a photo of a teenage boy. Latino features, bright smile. Mateo, he's 15. Came to live with me 2 years ago when ICE deported his parents. Frank found out. He had connections, people who owed him favors. He got a lawyer, got the deportation reversed, got Mateo's parents back into the country legally. He put the phone away. Vincent Cole offered me money. Frank Blake gave me my family back. So yeah, I spied for 6 months. And then I stopped. And when Vincent threatened to report Mateo's immigration status, I told him to go to hell. What did he do? Nothing. Yet. But he will. Vincent doesn't forget. And he doesn't lose. Tom looked at me hard. You take this fight to him, you better be ready for war. He won't just sue you, he'll destroy you, everything you have, everyone you love. That's how he operates. I'm not afraid of him. You should be. Will you help me anyway? Tom studied me for a long moment. Then he smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a man who'd been waiting for permission to hit back. "Yeah, I'll help you, but on one condition." "What?" "You don't do this because you feel guilty about your father. You don't do this to prove something to Vincent. You do this because it's right, because that stabilizer could save lives. You understand." I thought about the blueprints, about the calculations showing 30% fuel reduction, about what that meant for safety, for efficiency, for the thousands of flights happening every single day. "I understand." "Then let's go to work." We spent the next 3 days at the workshop, Tom teaching, me learning, Emma documenting everything on her phone. The first thing Tom made me do was run a simple bead on scrap steel. I set up the TIG torch, adjusted the amperage, struck an arc. The puddle formed. I fed the rod, started the pass. It looked good, felt good. I was halfway across when Tom shut off the machine. "What are you doing?" "Running a bead." "No, you're making noise. There's a difference." He pointed to the weld. "Look at the ripples. They're inconsistent. See how the spacing changes? That's because you're moving at different speeds. You're thinking too much, trying to control instead of responding. I need to control the variables. Metal doesn't care about your engineering degree. It responds to heat pressure and time. You treat it like a math problem, you'll get math results. Precise and useless. That doesn't make sense, doesn't it?" He set up his own piece, struck an arc, ran a bead that looked like artwork. Perfect ripples, perfect penetration, perfect everything. "How did you do that?" "I listened." "To what?" "The metal. It tells you what it needs. You just have to stop thinking long enough to hear it." I wanted to argue, to explain that listening to metal was pseudoscience nonsense, that welding was applied physics and chemistry, nothing more. But the evidence was right in front of me. His weld was objectively superior to mine. So I tried again, and again, and again. By the end of day 1, my welds were better. Not good, but better. By the end of day 2, I could run a consistent bead. By the end of day 3, Tom nodded and said, "Good enough. Now let's see if you can actually build something." He pulled out the blueprints for part 1, the base assembly, a complex piece that required precise machining on the lathe, careful welding of multiple components and tolerances that left no room for error. "This is your test. Build it. If it works, we move forward. If it doesn't, we figure out why and try again." "How long do I have?" "As long as it takes. But Vincent's offer expires in 11 days, so I'd work fast if I were you." I started that night. Emma had gone back to Portland to handle some school paperwork, but promised to return on the weekend. Tom stayed working on his own projects, but always nearby when I had questions. The lathe was the first challenge. I hadn't operated one in 28 years. The controls felt foreign. The feeds and speeds that used to be instinct were now guesswork. I started with simple cuts, facing, turning, getting a feel for the machine again. My first part was garbage. Tolerance is off by 3 thousandths. Might as well have been 3 miles. My second part was better. Only off by 1 thousandth. Still unusable. My third part was close. 0.5 thousandths. Almost there. My fourth part was perfect. It took me 16 hours and 4 failures, but I'd done it. Tom inspected it with a micrometer, checking every dimension, finally nodded. Your father would have done it in 2 hours. I'm not my father. No, you're not. You're better. He handed the part back. Frank was a natural, talent without effort. You're having to earn every thousandth. That makes you more dangerous. How? Because when you finish this, you'll understand it at a level he never did. You'll know why it works, not just that it works. Over the next week, I fabricated the rest of part 1. Each piece was a battle, each tolerance a war. But slowly, painfully, the assembly came together. Tom taught me things my father never had. Advanced techniques, tricks for difficult materials, ways to troubleshoot when things went wrong. And they went wrong constantly. On day 5, I cracked a critical component during heat treatment. Had to start over. On day 6, I misaligned a welding jig and ruined 8 hours of work. On day 7, the lathe's chuck slipped and sent a half-finished part spinning across the workshop. It embedded itself in the wall 2 inches from my head. I stood there shaking, staring at the piece of steel that nearly killed me. Tom walked over calmly, pulled it out of the wall, examined it. Good thing you ducked. I didn't duck, I froze. Then good thing you're short. He handed me the part. Machine's trying to kill you. That means you're doing something wrong. Figure out what. I figured out what. The chuck pressure was uneven, one jaw tighter than the others. I adjusted it, tried again. This time the part stayed put. By day 8, I had part 1 completely assembled. It was beautiful. Precisely machined components fitted together with tolerances so tight you couldn't see the seams. The gyroscopic assembly spun freely, balanced perfectly. Tom tested it, spun it up to speed, watched it stabilize, nodded. It works. Now let's see if you can make part 2. Part 2 was the material science component, an alloy housing that required specific heat treatment to achieve the right balance of strength and flexibility. The problem was I'd never done metallurgy. That was always someone else's department at Boeing. Tom walked me through it. Temperature curves, quenching rates, tempering cycles. It was like learning a new language. My first attempt came out brittle, shattered during testing. My second attempt was too soft, deformed under pressure. My third attempt was close but showed stress fractures. My fourth attempt was perfect. I held it up to the light. The metal had a subtle iridescence, a sign that the crystal structure had formed exactly right. How does it feel? Tom asked. Like I just gave birth. He laughed. Wait till you have to make 10 of them. 10. You didn't think one prototype would be enough, did you? You need redundancy, backups, test articles. Vincent's lawyers will demand independent verification. That means multiple working units. My heart sank. 1 had taken me a week. 10 would take months. I don't have months. I have 3 days before Vincent's offer expires. So let it expire. What's he going to do? Sue me? Tie me up in court until I run out of money? Will he win? Eventually, maybe. He's got resources I don't. But if I can prove the design works, if I can show it was developed independently, I might have a chance. Tom scratched his chin. You need a lawyer, a good one. I have Hutchins. Hutchins does property law and wills. You need someone who fights corporate. I can't afford that kind of lawyer. Then find someone who works on contingency, someone who wants a piece of the settlement when you win. If I win. When? Tom's voice was firm. You're going to win, Sarah, because you're doing the work. Vincent's doing math. Math loses to work every single time. I wanted to believe him, but doubt was a constant weight. That night, alone in the workshop, I assembled parts 1 and 2 into a partial prototype. It wasn't complete. It wasn't ready for testing. But it was enough to see the shape of what my father had envisioned, and it was brilliant. The design was elegant in a way that only truly revolutionary engineering can be. Simple components working together to create complex behavior. The kind of solution that makes you angry, you didn't think of it yourself. I understood then why Vincent wanted it so badly. This wasn't just valuable. This was transformative. This was the kind of technology that redefined industries. And my father had created it while working a register at a hardware store. The enormity of what he'd done hit me like a physical force. He hadn't just been good. He'd been a genius, operating at a level most engineers never reach. And he'd done it in secret in this workshop with no recognition and no reward, because it was right, because it mattered, because someone had to. I picked up my phone and called Emma. Mom, it's midnight. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. I just needed to tell you something. Okay. Your grandfather was the best engineer I've ever known. Better than anyone at Boeing. Better than anyone I studied with at university. And I never told him. I never even acknowledged it. I was too busy being embarrassed by him. Silence on the line. Then, he knew Mom. How could he know I never said? He knew because you became an engineer. You could have done anything, but you chose his profession. That told him everything. I chose it to escape him, to prove I was better. And you proved it by becoming exactly what he was, someone who builds things that matter. Emma's voice was gentle. He wasn't hurt that you left. He was proud. The journals make that clear. Every patent you filed, every promotion you got, he celebrated. He had a whole scrapbook of your accomplishments. What scrapbook? It's in the office, top drawer. I found it yesterday. Newspaper clippings about Boeing projects you worked on. Printouts of your LinkedIn profile. Photos of you receiving awards. He tracked everything. I opened the drawer. There it was. A leather binder worn with handling. Inside were years of my life carefully documented by a man I'd pretended didn't exist. Articles about the Orion stabilization system, my promotion to senior engineer, the patent award ceremony, where I'd thanked everyone except him, and on the last page a photo of me and Emma at her high school graduation. We were both smiling, both proud. Underneath in my father's handwriting, she did it. She became everything I hoped, and she did it her way. That's all a father can ask. I closed the binder and cried. Not sad tears this time, grateful tears, for a father who'd loved me enough to let me go, who'd been proud of me even when I was ashamed of him, who'd built me an escape route and then prepared a way back when I needed it. I'm going to finish this, I told Emma. Not for the money, not to beat Vincent, for him. I know you will, Mom, and I'll help. I'm coming back tomorrow. You don't have to. Yes, I do. This is my legacy, too. Grandpa left it to both of us. I'm not letting you do this alone. The next morning, Emma arrived with supplies, food, coffee, and a laptop loaded with CAD software. I declared a major, she announced. Mechanical engineering. If we're going to be a fabrication dynasty, I should probably know what I'm doing. Em, you don't have to change your whole life for this. I'm not changing it. I'm choosing it. There's a difference. She set up the laptop. Now show me these designs. I want to understand what we're building. We spent the day going through the blueprints together. I explained the physics. She asked questions that made me think harder about the implementation. It was collaboration in a way I'd never experienced. Not boss and subordinate, not teacher and student. Partners. By evening, she'd created a 3D model of the complete assembly. Seeing it rotate on screen, understanding how every piece interacted was revelatory. Mom, this is insane. If this works the way the simulations show, it's worth way more than $50 million. I know. Then why did Grandpa hide it? Why not patent it himself, sell it legitimately? Because Vincent's father would have buried him in litigation, claimed it was developed using company resources. By the time Frank proved otherwise, he'd have been bankrupt. So he waited, perfected it, prepared evidence, and left it to me. Why you? Because I have credentials Vincent can't dismiss. I'm a senior aerospace engineer with Boeing on my resume. When I present this design, it carries weight his lawyers can't hand-wave away. Emma nodded slowly. He weaponized you. He gave me armor. Tom arrived that evening with news. Found you a lawyer. Name's Patricia Vance. Used to work for the FAA. Now she does private practice representing inventors against corporate theft. Wins 80% of her cases. Can I afford her? She works on contingency for cases she believes in. I sent her the basics. She wants to meet tomorrow. Where? Here. She's driving down from Portland. The next morning, a silver Tesla pulled up to the workshop. Out stepped a woman in her 50s dressed like she meant business. Sharp suit, sharper eyes. Patricia Vance didn't waste time on pleasantries. Show me the design. I showed her. All 3 parts, the simulations, the partial prototype, the evidence of independent development. She studied everything for 2 hours, asked technical questions I barely understood, took photos, made notes. Finally, she looked up. This is the real deal. You can tell that from blueprints. I can tell from the fact that Vincent Cole has been sending threatening letters to every aerospace engineer who's mentioned gyroscopic stabilization in the last 10 years. He's terrified someone will develop this before he does, which means it's real and it's valuable. Will you take the case? 30% of any settlement or licensing deal, plus expenses. And you do exactly what I say when I say it. Deal. I looked at Tom, at Emma. Both nodded. Deal. Patricia smiled. It was not a friendly smile. Good. Then let's talk about how we're going to destroy Vincent Cole's week. She laid out the strategy. First, complete the prototype. Document everything. Video, photos, time-stamped data. Create an undeniable record that the device worked and was developed independently. Second, file a provisional patent immediately. Lock down the intellectual property before Vincent could claim it. Third, reach out to Boeing and 2 other aerospace companies. Offer to license the technology. Create a bidding war. Fourth, leak the story to the press. Make it public. Once it was in the news, Vincent couldn't make it disappear quietly. He'll sue, Patricia said. Probably for theft, corporate espionage, breach of contract. He'll throw everything at you, hoping something sticks. Can he win? Not if your documentation is solid, not if the prototype works, not if we can prove your father developed this on his own time with his own resources. She paused. But he can make it expensive and painful. Are you ready for that? I thought about my father dying alone, about Marcus Webb murdered and forgotten, about Vincent Cole spending 25 years hunting for something to bury. I'm ready. Then get to work. I need a working prototype in 7 days. 7 days. It had taken me 2 weeks to build a partial prototype. Now I needed a complete testable unit in half that time. I looked at Tom. Can we do it? Not we, you. This has to be your work, documented, witnessed, defendable in court. He pulled out his phone. But I can call in some favors. Get you the materials you need faster. Set up proper documentation. Keep Vincent's people from snooping. What people? He's got someone watching. Has for days. White van parked on the ridge across the valley. They rotate shifts every 8 hours. My blood went cold. He's surveilling us. Of course he is. He knows you didn't take his offer. He knows you're up to something. So he's watching, waiting to see what you do. Can we stop them? We can make it harder. But honestly, let them watch. Let them report back that you're working your ass off in here. It'll make Vincent nervous. Nervous people make mistakes. Emma looked scared. Mom, if he's watching, if he knows what we're building, then we build it faster. I worked for 6 days straight, 18-hour days. Tom handling logistics, Emma documenting, Patricia preparing legal filings. I fabricated part 3 from my own designs, a complex assembly that required everything I'd learned. Precision machining, advanced welding, perfect heat treatment. It took 4 attempts, 4 failures, but the 5th attempt worked. On day 6 at 3 in the morning, I bolted the final component into place. The complete prototype sat on the workbench, 30 pounds of engineered metal, 25 years of my father's work. 2 weeks of mine. It's done, I whispered. Tom looked it over, checked every joint, every tolerance, every weld. It's perfect. We don't know that until we test it. Then let's test it. We'd built a testing rig, a simple frame that would simulate the forces of flight. We mounted the prototype, connected sensors, set up cameras. Emma stood ready to document. Patricia watched via video call. Tom operated the controls. I held my breath. Initiating spin-up, Tom said. The gyroscopes began to rotate, slowly at first, then faster. The whole assembly hummed with precisely controlled energy. Applying lateral force, Tom activated the hydraulic rams that pushed the frame sideways, simulating turbulence. The prototype responded instantly. The gyroscopes compensated. The frame stabilized, perfectly level despite the external force. Increasing force to 200% nominal. More pressure, more turbulence. The prototype adjusted, held steady. 300%. Still stable. 400%. The frame shook but held. The gyroscope screaming now, but still controlled. Still working. Tom shut it down. The gyroscope spun down to silence. We all stared at the data. Emma spoke first. Did it work? Patricia answered from the laptop. It worked. Better than the simulations predicted. This is Nobel Prize level engineering. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. My father had done it. He'd actually done it, and I'd finished it. Tom put his hand on my shoulder. Frank would be proud. I nodded. Still couldn't speak. Emma hugged me. We did it. We actually did it. Patricia's voice cut through the celebration. Document everything. I'm filing the provisional patent in 2 hours, and then I'm calling Boeing. Why Boeing first? Because they fired you, and I'm going to make them regret it. The next morning, Vincent Cole's offer expired. I didn't respond, didn't acknowledge it, just kept working. That afternoon, Patricia sent a press release to Aviation Week, Wired, and the New York Times. Former Boeing engineer completes revolutionary stabilization system developed by late father. The story went viral in 6 hours. By evening, I had calls from 3 aerospace companies. By midnight, Boeing's CEO had left a voicemail personally, and at 2 a.m, Vincent Cole's lawyers filed a lawsuit. Theft of proprietary technology, corporate espionage, breach of contract. They were asking for $200 million in damages and immediate seizure of all prototypes and documentation. Patricia called me at dawn. They're coming after you hard. Emergency hearing in 3 days. They'll try to get an injunction blocking you from demonstrating or licensing the technology. Can they win? Not if we show up ready to fight. Pack everything, every document, every video, every photo. We're going to court. I looked around the workshop, at the prototype, at the machines my father had maintained for decades, at the life he'd built in secret. I'm ready. Good. Because this is where it gets ugly. Vincent's going to try to destroy you personally, your reputation, your credibility. He'll dig up every mistake you've ever made and use it against you. Let him try. Sarah, I need you to understand. This isn't just a legal battle. This is war, and war has casualties. Are you prepared for that? I thought about my father, about Marcus, about every person Vincent Cole had destroyed to protect his empire. I've been preparing my whole life, I said. I just didn't know it until now. The courthouse in Portland was built to intimidate. Marble columns, vaulted ceilings, the kind of architecture that reminds you the law has weight and history and doesn't care about your personal problems. I stood on the steps at 8 in the morning, clutching a briefcase full of documentation that represented everything my father had died protecting. Emma stood to my left, pale but determined. Tom to my right, solid as the mountains behind us. Patricia was already inside preparing. Vincent Cole arrived in a motorcade. 3 black SUVs. His legal team filed out like an invasion force. 12 lawyers in identical suits carrying identical briefcases. They moved with the synchronized precision of people who'd done this hundreds of times before. Vincent was last. Perfectly tailored charcoal suit, Italian shoes, a smile that said he'd already won. He stopped when he saw me. That smile widened. Ms. Blake, I'd hoped you'd reconsider before we reached this point. I'm sure you did. It's not too late. My offer still stands. $750,000. Walk away. Keep your dignity. My dignity isn't for sale. Everything's for sale. You just haven't hit your price yet. He glanced at Emma. College is expensive. Your daughter's future is expensive. Pride is a luxury you can't afford. Tom stepped forward. Keep walking, Cole. Vincent's eyes flicked to Tom. Recognition. Dismissal. Mr. Walker, I'm disappointed you chose the losing side. I thought you were smarter than that. Smart enough to know the difference between money and honor. You should try it sometime. Vincent's smile never wavered, but something cold flashed in his eyes. We'll see who's smarter when the judge rules. Enjoy your moment, Sarah. It's the last one you'll have. He walked past us into the courthouse. His legal army followed. Tom watched them go. He's scared. How can you tell? Because he came personally. Men like Vincent don't show up unless they're worried. He wants to watch you lose. Then let's not lose. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, uncomfortable benches, the Honorable Margaret Reeves presiding. A woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and eyes that had seen every legal trick ever invented. We sat at the defendant's table. Patricia laid out her materials with military precision. Vincent's team sat across the aisle. Their table looked like a war room. Judge Reeves entered. We stood, sat. She reviewed her notes. This is an emergency hearing regarding Cole Industries' motion for a preliminary injunction. Mr. Brennan, you may proceed. Vincent's lead attorney stood. James Brennan, senior partner at Portland's most expensive firm. He had the kind of voice that made everything sound like established fact. Your Honor, this is a straightforward case of theft. The defendant, Sarah Blake, is attempting to patent and commercialize technology that was developed by her father while he was employed by Cole Industries. Technology that belongs to my client under a valid contract signed in 1987. He projected a document on the screen, my father's signature at the bottom. This contract clearly states that any inventions or discoveries made using company time, resources, or facilities become the property of coal industries. Franklin Blake violated that contract. His daughter is now attempting to profit from that violation. "Ms. Vance," the judge said. Patricia stood. "Your Honor, that contract is irrelevant. Franklin Blake developed the stabilizer design after he left coal industries, on his own time, using his own resources, at a facility he built himself. The contract has no bearing on independent work." "Can you prove the timeline?" Judge Reeves asked. "We can. We have dated journals, purchase orders, fabrication logs, all showing development occurring between 1998 and 2024, years after Mr. Blake left coal industries." Brennan smiled. "Your Honor, we have evidence suggesting otherwise." He projected another document, an internal coal industries memo dated 1986. This memo references Project Horizon, a gyroscopic stabilization initiative led by Franklin Blake and Marcus Webb. The technology Ms. Blake is now claiming was developed independently is clearly derivative of work begun at coal industries. Patricia didn't miss a beat. Project Horizon was theoretical research. No working prototypes were ever developed. Coal industries abandoned the project in 1987. The adaptive kinetic stabilizer is a completely different design using different principles. That's your assertion. We disagree. Then let's test it, Patricia said. We have a working prototype. Your client does not. If this technology was developed at coal industries 37 years ago, why has your client never produced a functioning unit? Brennan's smile tightened. The project was shelved for commercial reasons, or because it never worked, because the only person who could make it work was Franklin Blake, working independently for 25 years after he left your client's employment. Judge Reeves held up her hand. Ms. Vance, do you have this prototype? We do, Your Honor, and we're prepared to demonstrate it. Objection, Brennan said. Any demonstration would be premature. We need time to examine the device, verify its provenance, confirm it's not based on stolen coal industries research. How long? The judge asked. 6 months, maybe a year. Patricia turned to Brennan. A year to examine a device that takes 10 minutes to demonstrate, that's not due diligence. That's obstruction. Your Honor, this technology represents billions in potential value. We need to be thorough. Judge Reeves leaned back. Ms. Vance, can you demonstrate that this device was developed independently of coal industries' work? We can show the complete development timeline, materials purchased, parts fabricated, tests conducted, all documented with dates and locations proving independent development. Mr. Brennan, do you have evidence that Mr. Blake used coal industries resources after 1987? We're still investigating. That's a no. The judge made a note. Here's my ruling. Ms. Vance, you'll provide Mr. Brennan with copies of your documentation. He'll have 72 hours to review. We'll reconvene Friday at 9 a.m. At that time, if coal industries can show credible evidence of their ownership claim, I'll grant the injunction pending full trial. If not, the motion is denied, and Ms. Blake may proceed with her patent and licensing efforts. Your Honor, Brennan said, 72 hours isn't sufficient. Then work fast. This hearing is adjourned. She stood. We stood. She left. Vincent's team immediately surrounded him, talking in low, urgent voices. He listened, nodded, then looked across the courtroom at me. Our eyes met. He wasn't smiling anymore. We walked out into bright autumn sunshine. Emma exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for an hour. Did we win? We bought 3 days, Patricia said. That's not winning, that's surviving. What happens Friday? They'll come back with everything they have, expert witnesses, technical analysis, probably some surprise evidence we haven't seen. Brennan doesn't lose cases. He'll find something. Like what? I don't know. That's what worries me. She checked her phone. I need to get back to my office, prepare for every possible angle. Sarah, I need you to go through every single document your father left, anything that could be used against us. I've been through everything. Go through it again. Brennan's going to be looking for any connection between your father's work and coal industries, any email, any phone call, any materials purchased that could have been traced to their suppliers. Find it before he does. She left. Tom, Emma, and I stood on the courthouse steps watching the city move around us. Let's get breakfast, Tom said. You need food. Then we go back and we do what Patricia said. We found a diner 3 blocks away, ordered coffee and pancakes we didn't taste, sat in a booth while the morning rush flowed around us. Emma pushed her food around her plate. Mom, what if they find something? What if there is a connection we don't know about? Then we deal with it. How? By telling the truth. Your grandfather developed this independently. We have proof. That's all we can control. But what if the truth isn't enough? I didn't have an answer for that. Tom's phone buzzed. He looked at it and his face went hard. What? I asked. He showed me the screen. A text from an unknown number. Tell Sarah Blake to check her email. She'll want to see this. A friend. I pulled out my phone, opened my email. There was one new message from an address I didn't recognize. Subject line, you should know who you're working with. I opened it. Inside were photos. Tom's grandson, Mateo, at school, at home, getting off the bus, timestamps from yesterday. Below the photos a message. Immigration status is a fragile thing. One call to ICE and the Walker family has problems again. Tell your lawyer to drop the case. You have 24 hours. My hands were shaking. Tom, I know. His voice was calm, but his eyes were dangerous. Vincent's making his move. They're threatening Mateo. They're trying to. Won't work. How can you say that? They know where he goes to school. They're watching him. Let them watch. Mateo's legal. His parents are legal. Frank made sure of that. Whatever Vincent thinks he can do, he can't. Tom took the phone gently from my hands. But he can scare us. That's what this is. Intimidation. Emma's voice was small. What do we do? "We call Patricia," I said. "This is witness intimidation. It's illegal." Tom shook his head. "It's a text from an unknown number with publicly available photos. No explicit threats. No provable connection to Vincent. Patricia will tell you to document it and move on." "So we just ignore it?" "No, we let Vincent think it worked. Then we hit him where he's not looking." "What does that mean?" Tom stood, dropped cash on the table. "It means we go back to Northwood and I make some calls to people who owe me favors. Vincent wants to play dirty. He doesn't know what dirty looks like." We drove back in silence. The workshop felt different when we arrived. Not safe anymore. Exposed. Tom made his calls from outside, pacing, talking in low tones. I couldn't hear the conversations, but I could see his face. Whatever he was arranging, it wasn't legal advice. Emma helped me go through the documents again. Every receipt, every journal entry, every scrap of paper my father had saved. Hours passed. The sun tracked across the sky. My eyes burned from reading. Then I found it. A purchase order dated 1999 for specialty steel from a supplier called Everett Metals, the same supplier Coal Industries had used. My stomach dropped. "Em, look at this." She read it. "Is that bad?" It could be. If Vincent can argue that Dad used the same suppliers, accessed the same materials, it creates a connection. Suggests he was still working on Coal Industries projects. But he wasn't. He was just buying steel. We know that, but a lawyer could spin it differently. I kept digging. Found 3 more purchases from Everett Metals between 1999 and 2003. All specialty alloys, all the same grades Coal Industries used for aerospace work. Then I found something else, an invoice marked "Paid Cash," but stapled to it was a note in my father's handwriting. "E.M. confirmed. No records of purchase sent to Seawine or affiliates. Paid premium for discretion." Everett Metals had agreed to hide the purchases from Coal Industries. My father had been covering his tracks, deliberately, which meant he'd known this day would come. I called Patricia. "I found something. Purchase orders from a Coal Industries supplier, but there's a note saying the supplier agreed to hide the records." Silence. Then, "That's actually good." "How is that good?" "It proves he was hiding something. It proves he was aware of potential conflicts and took steps to avoid them. That's exactly what an innocent person would do. Brennan will try to use it against you, but it's defensible." She paused. "Anything else?" "Not yet. Keep looking. I'll work on a response strategy for the supplier connection." She hung up. Emma touched my arm. "Mom, you okay?" I keep thinking about what Vincent said, that Dad spent his life running from reality, that he died alone clinging to a fantasy. You don't believe that. Don't I? He gave up a career, a reputation, a life, for what a design he never got to see finished, money he never got to spend, recognition he never received. He did it for you. I didn't want him to. That's what made it a sacrifice. Emma pulled out her phone, showed me the photos from the journal again. My father and Tom, both grinning, both covered in metal dust and clearly happy. He wasn't running, Mom. He was building something that mattered, building a future for us, building hope that someday someone would finish what he started. She looked at the workshop around us, and someone did. You did. I wanted to believe her. Wanted to believe my father's life had meaning beyond the waste I'd always seen. But doubt is a heavy thing. Tom came back inside as evening fell. His face was grim. I talked to some people, put out some feelers about Vincent's operation, found something interesting. What? Vincent's been buying up patents, specifically aviation stabilization patents. Over the last 15 years, he's acquired 17 different designs, paid millions for them. Why? To bury them. None of them have been developed. None of them are in production. He buys them and shelves them. Emma frowned. Why would he do that? Because Coal Industries makes money on maintenance and repairs. Stable aircraft need less of both. Vincent's not trying to advance aviation. He's trying to prevent it from advancing. The implications hit me like a punch. He's suppressing innovation for profit. And your father's design is the one he wants most, because it's the one that actually works. I thought about my father's letter, about him saying Vincent would bury the stabilizer, that it would disrupt the industry. I'd thought he was being paranoid. He'd been exactly right. How many people know about this? I asked. Not many. Vincent's good at hiding it, uses shell companies, confidential settlements. But I've got a friend who works in patent law. She's been tracking the pattern for years. Never had proof solid enough to go public. Does Patricia know? I'm calling her next. This changes things. If we can prove Vincent's running a suppression scheme, it undermines his entire case. He's not protecting legitimate intellectual property. He's killing innovation. Tom made the call, put it on speaker. Patricia listened to everything. When Tom finished, she was quiet for a long moment. That's the kind of information that could flip this entire case, but it's also dangerous. Vincent has powerful friends. If we accuse him of patent suppression without ironclad proof, he'll bury us in defamation suits. So what do? I asked. We use it as leverage, behind the scenes, make him nervous, let him know we know. She paused. I have a contact at the Seattle Times, investigative journalist. If I give her this information off the record, she can start digging, put pressure on Vincent from another angle. Do it, I said. You're sure once this goes to a journalist we can't pull it back? I thought about my father spending 25 years in secret, about Marcus Webb murdered, about 17 patents bought and buried, about an industry held back for profit. I'm sure. Okay, I'll make the call. But Sarah, understand what this means. Vincent will escalate. He'll come after you with everything he has. Your job history, your finances, your personal life. He'll try to destroy your credibility in every way possible. Let him try. I'm serious. When powerful people feel cornered, they get vicious. Are you ready for that? I looked at the prototype sitting on the workbench, at the workshop my father built, at Emma and Tom standing with me. I'm ready. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay on the cot in the office staring at the ceiling, thinking about what was coming. At 2 a.m. my phone buzzed. Email from an unknown sender. Subject last chance. I almost deleted it. Then I opened it. Inside was a single paragraph. Ms. Blake, you seem like a reasonable person caught in an unreasonable situation. Your father made choices that hurt a lot of people. Choices that created legal liabilities you've now inherited. I'm offering you a way out. $1 million. Patent rights. All documentation. Walk away and we'll make this disappear. You'll never hear from me again. This offer expires in 12 hours. After that, the legal costs alone will bankrupt you. Choose wisely. VC. $1 million. More than enough to secure Emma's future. Pay off every debt. Start fresh. I read it 3 times. Then I forwarded it to Patricia with a single line. His final offer. My answer is no. Her response came back in 30 seconds. Good. Now we know he's desperate. See you in court Friday. I put the phone down, closed my eyes, and for the first time in weeks, I slept without dreaming. Friday morning arrived cold and clear. We drove to Portland in convoy. Tom's truck leading my car, following Patricia behind us in her Tesla. The courthouse steps were crowded. News crews, cameras, reporters. The Seattle Times had run the story overnight. Patent suppression scheme alleged against aviation giant Coal Industries. The article was careful. No direct accusations, just questions. A pattern of purchases, industry speculation. But it was enough. Vincent's empire was cracking. We pushed through the media crowd. Inside the courtroom was packed. Standing room only. I recognized faces from Boeing, from other aerospace companies. This wasn't just a hearing anymore. It was an industry event. Vincent was already seated. He looked tired. For the first time, he looked like a man who might lose. Judge Reeves entered. We stood, sat. Mr. Brennan, you've had 72 hours to review the defendant's documentation. What's your position? Brennan stood. Your Honor, we've reviewed the materials provided. While the documentation appears to show independent development, we have concerns about the provenance of certain materials and the possibility of corporate espionage. Based on what evidence? We've identified supplier connections between Mr. Blake's purchases and Coal Industries approved vendors. This suggests access to proprietary supply chains. Patricia stood. Your Honor, using the same supplier isn't evidence of theft. It's evidence of buying the best materials available. We have documentation showing Mr. Blake paid cash specifically to keep his purchases confidential from Coal Industries. Why would he do that if he wasn't hiding something? Brennan asked. Because he knew Coal Industries had a history of aggressive litigation against former employees. He was protecting himself from exactly this kind of baseless claim. Judge Reeves looked at Brennan. Do you have any evidence of actual technology transfer communication stolen documents, access to Coal Industries facilities? We're still investigating. Mr. Brennan, you've had 3 days. Either you have evidence or you don't. A long pause. Then, we don't have direct evidence at this time, Your Honor. Then I'm denying the motion for preliminary injunction. Ms. Blake is free to pursue her patent application and licensing negotiations. The courtroom erupted. Reporters started typing. The Boeing representatives looked satisfied. Brennan raised his voice. Your Honor, we intend to file a full lawsuit. You're welcome to do so, but until you present actual evidence of wrongdoing, Ms. Blake's rights to her father's work are protected. Judge Reeves banged her gavel. This hearing is adjourned. She left. The room exploded into conversation. Vincent sat frozen at his table. His lawyers were already packing up, already moving to damage control. Patricia turned to me. You won. I couldn't speak, couldn't process it. Emma threw her arms around me. Tom was grinning. Patricia was shaking hands with people I didn't recognize. And across the aisle, Vincent Cole stood and walked toward us. Security moved to intercept, but he waved them off. He stopped 3 feet away. Congratulations, Ms. Blake. You've won the battle. We'll win the war, too. Maybe. Maybe not. He glanced at the prototype case Tom was holding. That device in there, it really works. It does. And it's really worth what they say. More. He nodded slowly. Your father was brilliant. I'll give him that. Stubborn, paranoid, but brilliant. He wasn't paranoid. He was right. About you, about your father, about everything. Vincent's expression didn't change. My father made choices I didn't agree with. That's history. What matters now is the future. The industry's future. You mean your profit margin. I mean stability. Change is dangerous, Ms. Blake. New technology disrupts markets, costs jobs, creates instability. Sometimes the best thing for everyone is to maintain the status quo. By suppressing innovation, by managing progress responsibly. That's not your choice to make. Isn't it I have resources you can't imagine? Political connections, media influence. Even if you patent this device, even if you license it, I can make sure it never sees production. I can tie you up in regulatory challenges for decades. Then why offer me $1 million to walk away? He smiled, tired, almost sad. Because I respected your father, despite everything. And I respect you. You fought harder than I expected. But this isn't over. It's just beginning. And the beginning is always the easy part. He turned and walked away. His legal team followed. The courtroom slowly emptied. Patricia touched my shoulder. Don't let him shake you. You won today. That's what matters. But Vincent's words echoed in my head. The beginning is always the easy part. Over the next 2 weeks, things moved fast. The provisional patent was filed and approved. Patricia negotiated licensing deals with 3 companies. Boeing offered $12 million for exclusive rights. Airbus countered with 15. A Chinese consortium offered 18. We took meetings in conference rooms I'd never been allowed in before. We had lawyers and accountants and advisors explaining terms I barely understood. Emma deferred her enrollment, declared she wanted to work with me, learn the business, carry forward what her grandfather started. Tom became our head of fabrication. We hired 6 local workers, started production on the first manufacturing-grade prototypes. The workshop went from a tomb to a factory in 3 weeks. And through it all, Vincent Cole was silent. No lawsuits, no threats, no contact. Patricia said it was the calm before the storm, that he was regrouping, planning, but weeks turned into a month. Then 2. The licensing deal with Airbus closed. $15 million, $5 million up front, $10 million on successful integration. I paid off the mortgage, set up Emma's college fund, gave Tom a raise he tried to refuse, and I stood in the workshop my father had built watching machines run, that he'd maintained building technology he'd invented, and I finally understood. He hadn't wasted his life. He'd invested it in me, in Emma, in a future he'd never see but believed in anyway. The memorial service was small, just Emma, Tom, Patricia, and a dozen people from Northwood who'd known my father over the years. We scattered his ashes in the forest behind the workshop, the place he'd loved, the place he'd built his dreams. I said a few words, not many, mostly thank you, and I'm sorry, and I understand now. Afterward, Tom pulled me aside. There's something Frank wanted you to have. He made me promise to give it to you after everything was settled. He handed me a small wooden box. Inside was a key, old iron, familiar, and a note.
Sarah, if you're reading this, you finished it. I knew you would. Not because you had to, because once you understood what it meant, you couldn't walk away. That's who you are. That's who you've always been. The key is to the workshop. It's yours now. Not because I'm gone, because you earned it. Build something beautiful. Love, Dad. I held the key and cried. Not sad tears, grateful ones.
6 months later, the first aircraft flew with our stabilization system installed. A Boeing 787, test flight over the Pacific. Emma and I watched the live stream from the workshop. Tom stood behind us. Patricia was on video call. The pilot's voice came through. Stabilizer engaged. Response is immediate. Compensation perfect. This is remarkable. The engineers on the ground cheered. Emma grabbed my hand. Grandpa did it, she whispered. We did it, I corrected. All of us. The system worked flawlessly. Fuel consumption dropped by 32%. Passenger comfort improved dramatically. Airlines started lining up for installation slots. Within a year, our technology was standard on new aircraft. Within 2 retrofits were being scheduled for existing fleets. We'd changed aviation, made it safer, more efficient, more accessible, everything my father had believed possible. Vincent Cole retired 6 months after our victory, sold his shares in coal industries, disappeared from public life. I never heard from him again, but I heard stories about the patent suppression scheme being investigated, about shareholders demanding answers, about an empire built on stagnation finally crumbling under its own weight. I didn't celebrate his fall. There was no satisfaction in it. I just kept building. We expanded the workshop, hired 30 employees, started developing new applications for the stabilizer technology, marine, aerospace, defense. Emma graduated with her engineering degree, joined the company full-time, started designing the next generation of systems. Tom trained a new generation of fabricators, kids from Northwood who needed skills and purpose. He gave them what my father had given me: a trade, a craft, a future. And every morning I walked into that workshop and saw my father's legacy living in every weld, every part, every person who'd found purpose in the work. 5 years after that first court victory, we got a visitor, a woman in her 70s, Dr. Catherine Brennan from MIT. She'd known my father 30 years ago, worked with him on early stabilization research. "I have something for you," she said. She handed me a flash drive. "Your father contacted me 3 years before he died. Said he was working on something revolutionary. Asked if I'd help with the theoretical framework. I did. We corresponded for 2 years. He never told me what he was building, just asked questions, tested ideas." "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because before he died, he sent me one final email. Said if anything happened to him, I should wait 5 years. See if his daughter finished the work. If she did, I should give her this." She nodded to the flash drive. "It's his notes on part 4. My heart stopped. Part 4. Quantum stabilization. The next evolution. He'd been working on theoretical applications for zero-gravity environments, space stations, interplanetary craft. He said you'd know what to do with it when the time was right. I stared at the drive. My father's final gift, his final challenge. He really believed I could do this. He knew you could. He told me, "My daughter thinks she ran away from me. She doesn't understand she ran toward exactly who she was meant to be. And when she's ready, she'll run further than I ever could." That night I sat in the office with Emma and Tom, put the flash drive in my laptop, opened the files. Inside were hundreds of pages, calculations, simulations, theoretical frameworks for stabilization in zero gravity, and a video file labeled "For Sarah, Part 4. I clicked play. My father's face filled the screen, older than the last video, sicker, but his eyes were bright. "Sarah, if you're watching this, you've done something I never could. You've changed the world. You've made flying safer for millions of people. You've proven that innovation matters more than profit. I'm so proud of you." He coughed, recovered. "But there's more work to do. Humanity's future isn't just in the sky. It's in space. And space has challenges we've never solved. Until now." He held up a blueprint. Even on the small screen, I could see the elegance of the design. "This is Part 4. Adaptive quantum stabilization for zero-gravity environments. It builds on everything we've done. But it requires resources we didn't have: money, partnerships, political will." He set the blueprint down. "You have those things now. You've built a company, a reputation, a platform. Use them. Build this. Send it to space. Show the world that the future belongs to people who dare to dream beyond what's practical." He leaned closer to the camera. "I won't be there to see it, but you will. And when the first spacecraft launches with our technology aboard, when it stabilizes perfectly in the void, when it proves that human ingenuity can overcome any challenge, I want you to remember something, his voice cracked. You didn't do this for me. You did this for everyone, for every person who'll fly safer, for every astronaut who'll work in stable conditions, for every dream that technology makes possible. He smiled. That's the real legacy, Sarah. Not the money, not the patents, not the recognition. It's the ripple effect of doing something that matters, of building something beautiful that outlives you. He reached toward the camera. I love you. Now go build the future. The screen went black. I sat there in silence. Emma was crying. Tom was staring at the wall. Finally, I spoke. We're going to do it. Do what? Emma asked. Build part 4. Send it to space. Finish what he started. Mom, that's years of work, billions of dollars, partnerships with NASA, SpaceX. I know, and we're going to do it anyway. Tom smiled. Frank would approve. Frank planned this, I said. He knew exactly what he was doing. He gave me part 3 when I was desperate. Gave me part 4 when I was successful. He's been guiding me from the grave the whole time. Emma wiped her eyes. So what's first? I looked at the blueprints on screen, at the workshop around us, at the future waiting to be built. First we learn, then we design, then we build, just like he taught me. How long will it take? As long as it takes. And if it doesn't work? I thought about my father's words, about failure being part of the process, about persistence mattering more than perfection. Then we try again and again until it does. 10 years later, I stood in a control room at Cape Canaveral, Emma beside me, Tom in a wheelchair now but still sharp, Patricia watching via video link. On the screens, a spacecraft prepared for launch, the first deep space mission to Mars, and aboard in the navigation system, our Part 4 stabilizer. The countdown began. 10, 9, 8. I thought about my father, about that workshop in Northwood, about all the years he'd spent building in secret. 7, 6, 5. I thought about Vincent Cole, about all the people who'd tried to suppress this technology, to keep the future small and controlled. 4, 3, 2. I thought about Emma, about the company we'd built, about the hundreds of people now working on projects my father had only dreamed of. 1. The rocket launched. Fire and light and the roar of human ambition defying gravity. We watched it rise, watched it break through the atmosphere, watched it stabilize perfectly as it entered the void. The mission controller's voice came through. Quantum stabilizer engaged. Performance exceeds all projections. This is perfect, people. This is history. The control room erupted in cheers. Emma hugged me. Tom was crying. Patricia was shouting congratulations through the video link. And I stood there watching that spacecraft shrink to a point of light against the black. And I whispered, "We did it, Dad. We finished it." The ripple effect of that launch was immediate. 3 space agencies requested licensing meetings within a week, 5 private companies within a month. Within 2 years, our quantum stabilizers were standard on every deep space mission. We'd gone from a rusted workshop in Oregon to changing the future of space exploration. The company grew. We opened facilities in 3 states, employed over 500 people, generated technology that saved lives and pushed boundaries. But I never forgot where it started. Every year on my father's birthday, I closed the Portland offices and brought the entire company to Northwood, to that original workshop. We'd preserved it exactly as it was. The machines, the workbenches, the office with the desk and the filing cabinets. And I'd tell the story about a man who worked at a hardware store, who built his dreams in secret, who sacrificed everything to protect something he believed mattered, who'd change the world without ever seeking credit. The new engineers would listen, some skeptical, some inspired, and then I'd show them the work, the original blueprints, the first prototype, the progression from part 1 to part 4. I'd show them what persistence looks like, what vision looks like, what love looks like when it's expressed through craft. And every year someone would ask the same question. Why did he do it? Why spend his whole life on something he knew he'd never finish? And every year I'd give the same answer. Because someone had to, and because he believed that someone would finish it. He had faith in a future he'd never see. That's the definition of hope. On the 20th anniversary of my father's death, we dedicated a statue in Northwood's town square. Bronze, life-size. My father at his workbench, torch in hand, creating. The plaque read, Franklin Blake, 1950 to 2024, engineer, craftsman, visionary. He built the future one weld at a time. The whole town came. Emma spoke. Tom spoke. Even Patricia flew in. But I didn't speak. I just stood there and looked at the statue of my father, and I remembered. Remembered being 8 years old learning to strike an arc. Remembered being 16 angry that he didn't understand my ambitions. Remembered being 45 desperate and broken, standing in the rain with a rusty key. Remembered learning that the thing I'd run from was exactly what I needed to find. That evening I went back to the workshop alone, sat at his desk, pulled out the old journal he'd kept for me. On the last page, dated a week before he died, was one final entry. Sarah came to mind today. Wondered if she's happy. Wondered if she thinks about the old workshop sometimes. Wondered if she remembers that summer I taught her to read a micrometer. She was so precise, so careful, so brilliant. I hope she knows that brilliance isn't about where you work. It's about how you work. It's about building things that matter whether anyone notices or not. I hope someday she understands that I wasn't disappointed she left. I was proud she flew, and I hope someday she comes back. Not to the place, to the work, to the understanding that creation is its own reward. That's all I want, for her to build something beautiful. And maybe, if I'm very lucky, to know I helped. I closed the journal, turned off the light, locked the door, and I walked out into the Oregon night under stars that humans would soon reach because of technology my father had invented. And I understood. Legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you build forward. My father didn't leave me a workshop. He left me a question. What will you build that matters? And I'd spent 20 years answering it. But the question never stops. There's always another part 5, another impossible challenge, another dream waiting to be forged into reality. Emma asked me once when I'd retire, when I'd rest. I told her the truth. When the work is done. When will that be? I smiled. Never. The work is never done. That's the whole point. You don't build a legacy by finishing. You build it by teaching the next generation to continue. Your grandfather taught me. I taught you. You'll teach your children, and on and on. The work doesn't end. It evolves. She understood, just like I finally understood my father. We're all part of something bigger than ourselves, a chain of innovation and creation that stretches back through history and forward into a future we'll never see. My father was one link. I'm another. Emma will be the next. And someday, someone will stand in a workshop we haven't built yet, working on technology we can't imagine, and they'll tell the story of how it all started. With a rusted key, a forgotten workshop, and a man who believed that one person working in secret could change the world. He was right, and I proved it. Not for recognition, not for money, not even for justice, for the same reason my father did it, because someone had to, and because the work matters more than the person doing it. That's the master's hand at work, building, creating, persisting, one weld at a time, one dream at a time, one generation at a time, forever.